We are good to go, sir.
Namaskar, everybody, and a warm welcome to Professor G.D. Yadav, the former Vice Chancellor of UD City, known as ICT, and a wonderful, fine gentleman. Today, we are in episode 4th of the RECYCLEAN's dialogue, and we are going to talk about the impact of war, the financial volatility, the things that we are all passing through, and the Western influence on sustainability. And whom better than we have GD sir with us? War, a war of a pandemic since last 2 years. We faced it like never before. And now we have a war like unthought of in the recent years. It is the state of Ukraine is like a breadbasket to Europe, exporting 40% of its wheat and corn. And the war will have its effect on the soils and her waters and her lands full of pollution of chemical effects and the power plants and the oil mines and the old mines. It's a point to ponder, at what cost does this all happen to Mother Earth? And I would like to now request Dr. G.D. Yadav to please first present his thoughts, and after that we can have a Q&A session. Over to you, Dr. G.D. Yadav, sir.
Thank you. Oh, he is disabled. Can you give me the rights to present my slides?
Abhi, can you please give Dr. Yadav rights to...
Sure, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is 1 minute. Okay. Can you see this?
It shows sharing screen.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Yes, now we can, sir.
Okay. Now, see, I will also like to know whether this is seen now as full screen.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you. If for some reason there is some issue, then I will, restart it.
Right.
Okay.
Sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. At the very outset, let me wish you a happy Holi. And at the same time, I would advise you not to throw harmful colors at each other, because chemically they could be highly dangerous. So I've been invited to give my thoughts on the consequence of global uncertainties on recycling industry. Now you are the champions. I'm an academic, but practicing academic. And I would like to give you some thoughts on this, and then we can debate. Okay. So some of the things which have been discussed in media, all sorts of reports are there, is what is the impact of war? Per se, impact of war on the general society at large. Not only the warring nations, two nations, but across the globe. How it has affected the financial markets, and how the shareholders are worried about the value of their shares. Then what is going to happen after the war, and whether we'll have a recovery, and then the unemployment which is generated, and the opportunities for employment. And last but not the least is the Western influence on sustainability. Some of these issues I'm going to discuss, but this is the most important thing. War destroys planet and its ecosystem. So no matter who you are, it is a disaster for everybody. There is no winner in a war. Although momentarily somebody might say that they are winners, but that is not true. The Mother Earth loses a lot. And the history of this World War I and World War II has given us that information. At the same time, there is a flip side of this war, that new types of technologies are developed, and these technologies could be superior weapons, their use, sharp, shooting, and exactly the targets are without destroying something else. That may be technological advantage. But at the same time, it destroys lives, it destroys families, it destroys everybody. So that is what happens. So the war may benefit the weapon producing countries. And this is a flip side again. A lot of these people say, if there is no war, what will happen to this, arms dealers, and what will happen to the economy of these countries? The superpowers, a lot of their, income is because of these war machines, and the other nations buy from them. So there is a huge use of material, huge use of energy. There is a huge employment. So that is the flip side of this war. Okay, so we know, all these superior weapons and what happens. At the same time, look at the environment, because we are concerned with the sustainability and these conflicts change everything. First of all, it is a human-induced crisis. That is, the human beings are involved in that. Somebody makes a decision and the entire nation is behind it. And somebody else responds to it, and there may be another group of people or nations who are, trying to either control the war or trying to find a diplomatic solution. Okay. So as I said before, that it destroys lives, livelihoods, and creates chaos. This is what has happened now. Nobody has imagined, about now 2 years ago, that COVID will destroy us, right? And though that time nobody imagined that there will be a war now. So it has happened. So at the same time, very important part is that it affects the environment, and that environment be affected for generations to come. What happened in World War II? What happened to Nagasaki in Japan, and how many years it took to restore that environmental balance? So there is an inextricable link between the protection of the environment and the protection of the civilians. So let us discuss some of these issues. While somebody may say, a recycler may say, but there is a debris. Can this debris be reused? Because that is material, right? It is destroyed. It was not there. But can this debris be used for something else? That is a scientific thought. But this is because of the war. We know it, right? And war displaces millions and millions of people. And it affects the environment once again, because these people may go and live in camps and destroy everything. All sorts of things happen. So this is also another problem. And there is a humanitarian crisis across the world. And perhaps in Middle East, there has been war going on continuously. So people might be used to it, but it has, another side of it. And that is the kind of metals and debris which is created due to bombing. This is Ukraine, for example. You see that. I mean, this is debris. We have to make use of this debris to make something else, but this has been there because of the destruction by the war, right? That is correct. Look at the impact on financial markets. Okay, it has, shaken the entire world economy. The distribution of cost of this oil has been greatly impacted. Now, Russia is also a major oil producing country. The OPEC countries are there. US is there. The oil and natural gas industry is hugely affected. But at the same time, you will find some interesting aspect that when there is a ban, restrictions on Russia, financial restrictions, okay, then what happens? So both these markets in Ukraine and Russia have been affected. Okay. In fact, you know that the stock market was closed in Russia because the ruble was crumbling. So Russia launched a full-scale invasion, okay, and they invited this slew of sanctions, and that has resulted into the global financial market letdown. Okay, so remember, with reference to those, because sometimes this is being discussed, in 2017, China banned the import of waste. Now, you see, they were getting a lot of this plastic waste and other scrap and all, and they were reprocessing. So in a way, they were helping the environment. At the same time, they had their own policy. So you see that what had happened, that like polyethylene, polystyrene, PVC, PET, polypropylene, and all other things, which they were importing and processing, that industry was hugely affected. Okay, and that is well known. This could have been, prior to this thing. Remember another thing of the war, that is the crude oil prices surged beyond 100 per barrel. We had only this thing in 1973 oil embargo. Overnight, the cost of barrel went up. Okay, then there was something like around 2012 to 2014. Okay, that time the crude oil also touched $105. Very recently, it had gone up to 130. It has come down. So you can imagine that has affected the crude oil and gas prices, and therefore the industry is affected because the petroleum industry is affected. The energy in the industry are affected. Okay, so what happens? That because of a raft of harsh sanctions imposed by the Western countries, okay, the Russia's oil and gas flows, okay, they are not targeted because Russia is still exporting that to countries like Germany, okay. At the same time, Russia is the second largest crude producer, and so if the crude prices goes up, the petrochemical industry is affected, all secondary, tertiary, all those industries, specialty, pharmaceutical, everything is affected because this has a very, very damaging impact. This thing happened. This slide I borrowed from one of these, sources. You see that whenever there was a crisis, without going into the details, 1865 to 1890, okay, that time the oil recovery was there. Colonel Edwin Drake started that. Everything is there. Before that, they used to use this well. The well was used, the blubber of the well was used to make soap and also the illumination. And the population of well went on down. Okay. So at the same time, you see, there have been periods in the history of mankind that during crisis, whether it is pandemic or it is war, the crude oil prices have always, been affected greatly. And if that happens, then the entire world's economy is shaken. Okay. So then, for example, in 2011, there was the Libya civil war. It disrupted the production of oil. So that also affected. Okay. So you imagine, so this is the kind of thing which has happened. Now look at since last, for example, in November 2021, in April, to be precise, on 10th April 2020, the crude oil price was negative, right? And they said the industry will not be viable unless that crude oil price goes beyond, say, for instance, about $50 per barrel, or comfortably 60. So that thing happened in November, it went up to 85. Then it came down to about 67, 68. And once again, on February 24, it was shot up to beyond 100, 105. So you can imagine that the supply disruptions are affecting all industries, including the recycling industry. Okay, that's what I'm trying to tell you. So remember, the oil price surge in Russia invades. Look at this particular thing here. How this has been fluctuating. So 2016, then here it is 125, You can see that one. This happened in 2014, 2018, 2020. So there was a China-US trade war during Donald Trump's time. You can imagine that time also the crude oil prices went up significantly. That means whenever there is a crisis, it affects everybody in the society. Okay. So now you see that this has happened from February 21. This is Financial Times, their information. You see it is how it is rising. And we are all worried about the global economy. So what happens? Because of that, the inflation also goes up. The food inflation particularly. Across the world, you know, the inflation has gone up. Okay. So for example, this is, you know, this slide I have borrowed from this, you know, one of the sources. You see that this is, again, the prices are going up. If they rise, the inflation also rises. And particularly countries, European countries, they have the brunt of all this, okay? And the inflation will rise again. See, so again, you see the stock markets. Stock markets are once again, you know, you don't know what will be the price. Sometimes there is a cheer, another time, you know, people are sad, okay? So look at the Russian crisis. That is, they crashed by 38%. That was the biggest blow to Russian economy. You can imagine that, what happened, okay? The SWIFT was not allowed for them. This is another. Ukraine's the same thing happened, okay? Their bonds and government currencies crashed very significantly. And the important part is the food prices and fuel inflation. There is a, you know, relationship. The food prices across the world increased. So this is what has happened. So in stock markets in countries like India and everywhere, they were affected. So global economy is affected by war, and we are talking about something else. Okay. So what is the fate of the recycling industry in all these cases? Okay, what will happen to that? And some of these questions I'm going to answer. Since the crude oil prices, the gas prices are changing, because gas is used as a source of energy. It's also used for making hydrogen, for example, the gray hydrogen. And that gray hydrogen is used by refineries. They have some 7 different processes where hydrogen is required to upgrade the quality of the fuel. Okay, so you see all these entire chemical industry is affected because of the recycling industry can make use of many of these chemicals. There may be some physical processes, but most of them are chemical processes. Okay, so let us look at this. For example, when we have a crude oil, so for example, the crude oil prices goes up, benzene, toluene, xylene prices go up. Okay, the gases like butane, the ethane, ethylene, all those prices go up. It means all other down the line, everything is affected. Very recently, people might have seen this, the methanol prices went up like anything. Acetic acid prices went up like anything. Okay, the reason was the supply chain. So this is what is happening. And in all these things, ultimately, what is the fate of this carbon? That the fate of the carbon is carbon dioxide, so greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, and we are talking about net zero emissions by 2050. So let me come back to you. One of the things which I mentioned is that there is a sharp decline in global plastic waste trade flow and the changes in the treatment structure of countries whose impact on global environmental sustainability are enormous. And we are talking about sustainability. There are 7 different types of plastic. Out of which 6 plastic waste, there was a subsequent ban, okay? And the ban significantly improved 4 midpoint indicators. Environmental impact, albeit contributed to global warming, okay? And something like annual saving of about 2.35 billion euros of eco cost was realized, which is equivalent to 56% plastic waste global trade value in 2017. Okay, so to achieve the global environmental sustainability in the long run, the nations must realize that the transition from export to domestic management, in which our Indian industries, recyclers industry is interested, And from landfill to recycling, landfill is a bad solution. So recycling is the best solution, that everybody understands. And that would realize eco cost savings about 1.54 to 3.2 billion euros. This was the study done in Europe. Okay. So what it means, so we have to have, because for example, when you have recycled aluminum, the energy costs are about, which is very important. You see, recycled aluminum is 95% more energy efficient than creating new aluminum. Okay, that is one. There are lower emissions because of recycling. 10% lower increase in aluminum and end of cycle recycling rates. Cheaper products, okay, and reduction in the land use. Ultimately, what is the solution? The solution is zero waste society. To have zero waste society, we have to recycle each and everything. Because if you do the life cycle analysis, whether it is of metals or plastics or anything else, we have to see what is the ultimate fate of that material or the product in the environment. Okay, so if the sizes of the dumping grounds of the municipality where the municipal solid waste is dumped, that shrinks day by day, that means it is good for the environment. And how it will happen? It will happen only if the recyclers make use of that recycling. So, for example, PET is one of the best recycled materials, right? You see, China used to import so much of PET from across the world. It was US, Japan, Germany, Belgium, and many other countries. And then so there was a tough exports these countries to China, and China would process. Okay, so let us look at this. Some of these plastics. We have polyethylene, then high density polyethylene. Okay, poly PVC, then low density, then polypropylene, polystyrene, and many other non-recyclable plastic, okay, including acrylics, nylons, whatever. So this is a plastic waste. And across the world, there is a ban on single-use plastic, but I have a different opinion on this. So I'm going to tell you about that. Should it be banned? Our government of India has also banned it, right? They banned last year. So you see in countries like USA, see, there are states like California, there is a total ban on plastic. There are others where there is a plastic tax, okay? And in other places, they're recycling and reuse program. So USA does not have the same policy because every state is independent in that regard. They can have their own policy. Europe also. So sometimes they ban, then they allow, then they reduce use, or you have the cleanup amendments. In country like, for example, in Ireland, they had this recycle policy, and they found that there was a tremendous impact on their environment, and the cost of cleaning the environment went down significantly. So you look at the European Union single-use plastic. They said in July 2021, non-plastic alternative, wherever they are available, then the single-use plastic is banned. Okay, so you have cotton bud sticks, for example. There are design requirements. By 2025, 25% of the recycling content in PET beverage bottles. That is their policy, right? And 2030, it will be 30% recycling in all beverage bottles. Okay. And what they say, that the container caps and lids must remain attached to the container and they should not be thrown away, right? That is their policy. And then they have a target for separate collection. 77% of the single-use plastic bottles with caps and lids, okay, that is their target for collection. And 90% of SUP bottles with caps and lids by 2029. Okay, and that EPR obligation is that all member states must establish the EPR obligation schemes by 2020. Okay, so that will include the collection of the cleanup of the garbage, transport, treatment, etc. Okay, and what is the awareness measure? Aim for measurable quantitative reduction in consumption of SUP. Because that is what they believe. They believe that the single-use plastic use is brought down, then it will be good for the environment. So you look at India. So we are banning plastic bags, small plastic bottles, plastic plates, plastic straws, certain types of sachets, and plastic cups. Okay, and everywhere they are used. All these kinds of things are used. My solution is different. My solution is what? Plastic pollution, which has been done so far, including what is lying under the sea, that is one problem, and that is a very big problem. And another is, suppose we want to allow plastic use in future, can we have another solution by which it can be recycled and the environmental improvement will be there? So that can be done. So personally, I don't believe ban is the solution. Okay, if one technology creates societal problems due to irresponsible use by the citizens, another technology should solve it. Legislation is secondary. See, and SUPs can be recycled through chemical processing. So I'm going to tell you how we can do that. Okay, for example, you have this boy coming to your home every day and distributing the newspaper, right? He comes, he drops the newspaper, the housewife takes it inside, and then she will make the raddi and sell it. So it is a very good recycling, and that goes into making cardboards and all. So plastic is highly recycled, right? And this happens in across the world, right? So what happens if you collect the plastic, whether it is single use, PET, PE, or whatever, and that we segregate at source there, so that the municipality doesn't have to have the big dumping grounds and spend a lot of money, because a lot of money is spent on segregation. That is the major cost in plastic processing, right? So you see the municipal solid percentage waste by countries. US 35%, New Zealand is 0%. This is very interesting. Huh? They're solid waste. That means they're trying to recycle everything. So what can we do? See, in a country like Israel. So for example, so what they say, the packaging, then the corporate pledges, participation of NGOs, okay, multi-stream recycling, green dot system, pay as you throw, that is another thing, and embrace bottle return deposit schemes. That means, why were we not doing that in India? We have one, supposing I use the plastic bag, say milk bag. I am not supposed to throw it. I have already paid a deposit on it. Maybe it is 1 rupee. Okay, bottle maybe 5 rupees. If I return it, I will get it back if I return myself. But somebody else comes to my home and recovers it from me and pays the deposit back, takes a say commission of 5% or 5%, whatever. Then it is segregated at source. It can be taken back and recycled. So the recycler gets actually virgin material of the same kind, which can be processed, chemically processed. That is what I'm trying to tell you. All right. So there are, look at the plastic ban, PE, aluminum, plastic, PVC, PET, all those things you are knowing. Okay. And if you look at the plastic waste, China ban, we said now, how many countries where US was exporting 21% plastic to US, China, Germany 12, Japan 18%. So their plastic recycling industry was flourished on that, and all of a sudden they stopped it, right? We know. So when if you look at the PET bale prices versus the crude prices, look at the bottle prices and the crude. They are linked, right? If the crude price goes up, the PET bottle price also goes up. So when you introduce, like China introduced that system, okay, you see the prices, because the use of crude went down, because you are reusing that plastic, right? So there could be a mixture of virgin plastic and reused plastic. So that happened in China. So what I suggest, that waste plastic chemical recycling techniques are very good. And these are very well studied, well known. Whether, the hydrothermal processing, the chemolysis, pyrolysis, gasification, all these recycling techniques. And in this, the third theme which I am saying is that hydrogen is going to play a very important role. So if you have a green hydrogen, we can convert all these waste plastics into useful products. Okay. For example, in chemolysis, we have these reactions like hydrolysis, glycolysis, aminolysis, alcoholysis, acidolysis. What is the job? That is job is to break the backbone of the polymer, convert into something else. Okay, maybe monomer or some other chemical, which becomes a feedstock to the same industry or some other industry. So that is chemolysis. Okay, but in the case of hydrogenation, we can handle the troublesome molecules like chlorine, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur, right? All these molecules can be handled by hydrogen. Okay, and there is no dioxin in this. So hydrogenation is the best method for chemical, recycling. For example, we know this in refineries, they already use this, catalytic processes. So refineries know how to handle all these 4 types of nasty compounds, which contain chlorine, sulfur, nitrogen, oxygen, right? So this is dual function catalyst. So for example, if you have PVC, that chlorine will become HCl. If you have PET, the oxygen will become hydrogen, water. Polyamide, amine will become ammonia, right? And the rubber, sulfur will become H2S. And all these H2S can be, then you have the Claus process, supercard process, make sulfur, which is used by the industry anyway, sulfuric acid and all this. So all these technologies are already known. So why not make use of these technologies? For that, we have to have segregation at source so that we don't spend more money. Okay, so obviously these are catalytic processes. So we can use different types of catalysts. We have been doing some work in our laboratory. We can do all those things. And why hydrogen? Because hydrogen is the cleanest fuel and can be used. So for example, in the case of steel, waste steel, that creates so much of carbon dioxide. Typically, 1 ton of steel produces about 2.5 tons of carbon dioxide. India's last year's production was something like 102 million metric tons of steel. This year it is supposed to be 120. And government of India wants to go to 300 million metric tons. So imagine, we have signed the Paris Agreement of 2015, and we have to also, we need more energy. We need all these materials, including steel, whatever, reprocessing, and that energy is required. So at the same time, we have to bring down the carbon content in the atmosphere, the net zero goal 2050, although in that Glasgow meeting, CO2 26, Indian government said we will do it by 27. Why not 2050? So you see that the crude steel production I was mentioning 102.5, and this is going to grow up, okay? Because India, and in the case of the steel industry, instead of using the current processes, we can use hydrogen, and then we'll have clean steel. There is no carbon dioxide coming out of this process. Okay, that is what it is. And see, this is what I mentioned about 2.25 basic oxygen furnace requires that much carbon dioxide, and we have to bring it down to something like 0 carbon electricity. Okay, so obviously, so what happens? The municipal solid waste, which is highest recycled by countries, we see that, these are thinly populated countries like Iceland. But at the same time, highest percentage is New Zealand. I mentioned before, 100% municipal solid waste. Okay, so we have to see that we have to make use of biomass, waste biomass, not burn it, because that is also part of recycling, and that convert into some chemical, okay, or energy. Okay, that is what we have been advocating all along. So the circular bioeconomy, the concept. So you have biofuels and biogas, then you have biomaterials, you have food and feed. Okay, so this is the supply of biomass, and then the conceptual framework is required in terms of policy, strategies, and legislation. Like for example, single-use plastic ban legislation. Okay, but all these things we must be based on scientific idea. Okay, so what is the driving force? Driving force is technology and innovation, and there are many manufacturers, including the recyclers, who have developed their own technology, and that is very effective. It is not high energy intensive, and that is going to be helpful to the environment, right? That is what we need, and that is what we have to do. Okay, And so, this is very, very important thing. This is based on one of the papers written by this series of authors, that right from crop animals to water and all, how we can use these concepts to have circular economy. Okay, the whole idea is systems engineering approach. Nothing is waste. Everything has a use. That is the idea. Okay, so the so-called green economy is based on bioeconomy, which is production of biomass. Okay, and there you may have processing of biomass like food and feed, textiles, biorefineries, biofuels, and whatnot. We have been advocating, and we wrote a couple of articles, very important articles, which have been downloaded by many authors across the world, including policymakers, that carbon should not be wasted as a fuel. It should be all renewable, whether it is solar, wind, geothermal, nuclear, hydro, whatever. That should be the source of energy. Carbon should be used for chemicals and materials. And we showed that the debate of whether we should have, biofuels. So suppose you make ethanol, bioethanol. It should be used to make ethylene and all other products, and rather than burning it. Right now, our policy is what? Our policy is to mix it with petrol or diesel. And that also gives us so-called net zero. But to bring down the concentration of carbon dioxide today, which is 419 ppm, to below a certain range, so that the temperature of the globe does not go beyond 1.5 degrees C, we have to extract literally carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Right? So yeah, in the so-called circular economy, we have to have high degree of recycling, including that carbon dioxide, and the reduction of materials and products. And at the same time to maintain the value of materials, okay? And we have to minimize the waste. Really speaking, by 2030, we should aim for minimum waste economy, and by 2050, zero waste economy. Okay, that is what we should do. So finally, so there are so many investment opportunities. These are based on the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Like recycling, you see, recycling is a top, then waste minimization, waste management, energy from waste. Right now also these things are being done, but this is one of them. That leads to the principle number 12. Then renewable energy, energy efficiency, energy storage. Once again, this is goal number 7. Water treatment, sanitation, desalination, distribution network, that is number 6. Transportation, you see, all these things are related to the 17 sustainable goals, and the topmost is no poverty, number 1, and number 2, zero hunger. Okay, all these things are related things. Okay, so for zero hunger, we have to have agricultural technology, fertilizers, all those things, but they must be produced by using eco-friendly technology. So finally, if overuse of one technology or product creates a societal and environmental problem, another must solve it. And that is the history of technology. There is about 40 trillion global consumer economy, okay? Increasingly diverse and shaped by significant political and cultural differences. That is the history of the world. However, there is one belief consumers in all regions and sectors of the global economy seem to share is recycling is good. So your association should be very happy that recycling is supposed to be the best solution right now, okay, to minimize the waste and also, to add to the global economy. Recycling systems are not harmonized at all on global, national, or even regional levels, but rather are hyper-local, resulting in a patchwork of public, private, and hybrid systems. So there needs to be some uniformity, okay? And there should be a win-win situation where the recyclers benefit, the economy benefits, jobs are created, and the nation benefits ultimately. Thank you very much. And I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Yadav, for a wonderful presentation. It was indeed an eye-opener. I would like to begin with some questions. Let me ask on behalf of the audience first, and then we can take some questions from the audience. How will chemical recycling change the scenery of recycling in the new decade?
See, what I meant that there are two ways of looking at chemical recycling where the chemical reaction can take place, right? Whether it is carbon which is there, which has to be converted into another product. So I gave some examples of these 7 different plastics, okay, which where chemically we can convert, that is chemolysis, glycolysis, alcoholysis, or hydrogenation. All those things will break the chain and bring back into the monomer and other valuable chemicals. So which are very useful chemicals and high value chemicals. So from waste you are creating wealth. Okay, therefore the chemical recycling is a better idea. And sometimes, like for example, now also people say you can use the waste plastic in road making, mix it with tar and use it. Yes, but that is not a complete solution, right? That is not a complete. So we are to, because our problems are massive and we need solutions which are massive. And that net zero goal, for example, carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide, I can convert that into methanol, convert that into dimethyl ether, that formic acid, and many other chemicals, right? Carbon dioxide becomes a very, very important source because it is not now, right now, it is a burden on the environment. Next time it will be a feedstock. So it will be, instead of calling it a liability, we can convert it to asset. So recycling industry is an asset and not liability, right? So they are taking waste and convert it into useful product, and every product has its life cycle. Okay. So ultimately, that to make a zero waste society, the life cycle should be such that everything, for example, like batteries which you are using, right? The lithium batteries. We don't have lithium in India. You have to recover it, reuse it. Ultimately, so it has to be tied up with recycle and reuse. So henceforth, the manufacturer or the industries will be such that they will take back their product and recycle themselves. Okay, so there will be an incentive given to the consumer, and that is required in all cases. Like I mentioned about the plastic, like the plastic boy coming in the morning and collecting the waste bag, milk bag or pouch or whatever, because there is an incentive. Right now, that plastic bag is available free, so there is no incentive. So you like to dirty the environment, you like to litter it, you are going to throw it. That is what I mean.
There is a question online which I would like to read. It's from Mr. Subhash Tandon. He says, any comments about the stocks of chemical waste from chlorine, brine sludge, red muds? Right now, thousands of such sludge is lying in the landfill slides.
Yeah, there are, perhaps you should know that the government of India has a program on this waste management. In fact, I chair that program. That, red mud is one of the things which can be converted into an asset. There are a lot of red mud, quantities lying heaps and heaps. Okay. So whether you recover aluminum or titanium or things like that, I should mention here, Garda Chemicals, they developed a process on red mud where they can create a value of, valorize that red mud out of it. And there are others, like some people are, these are small solutions. So people say they can be made as a radiation shield. So there is some research going on in Ampri laboratory in Bhopal. So, but they are small, these things. Big means quantity must be converted into something which is also useful for a larger use. Like if I say carbon dioxide, for example, before I mentioned carbon dioxide, people say, why not make salicylic acid? The salicylic acid is a very small quantity. It's not that you're not going to create just a small quantity of salicylic. So any solution where there is a huge quantity of waste, millions of tons of waste, we require solutions which are useful, cheaper, And that is what is required. So in recycling, yes, there may be a certain places the quantity is small, but it is recycled. Good, because every drop makes an ocean. But the major problem has to be looking at much, bigger quantities of waste.
Thank you. There is a question as, what are the biggest issues you see that are being faced by the waste management companies of the world?
A very good question. Collection and segregation is the biggest problem. See, segregation of the waste, because all the waste, right now we have got this, distribution all, but still you see, now some of you might be traveling, going by plane. You see, even at the airport, we have 3-4 different types of containers, but people normally, they don't care. They will dump in the same container. I've seen it many times. So the awareness is very, very important. The producers are facing this problem because, see, there has to be some incentive also. Government has to give incentive, because the cost of environmental cleanup is going to be much more than what incentive they give to this recycling industry. Correct, that is one. But the problem is collection and segregation is that takes a lot of money in all these sectors.
Again, we have got an online question. What about the non-recyclable plastics and the microplastic generation? What do you feel are the solutions to that?
Well, that's a very hotly debated topic,
Plastic.
Plastics and all. But see, remember, these plastics are again carbon materials, right? So long as we have, so I said there are two solutions. One is the problem which we created before, till today, for example, because there was no legislation and people dumped everything in the environment, and you will see ifs and ifs of plastic bags lying here and there, and people are showing cows eating plastic bags and all those things. These are all exaggerated things, but yes, that is a very big problem. And second is henceforth. So technology should be of two different types. One, where you handle the plastic and the debris and the municipal solid waste, which contains everything. That is one problem. And another, henceforth, segregation at source only. Okay, then the technology can be employed very nicely. You want to know something, how much food waste we are wasting food. So, yes. And even if you assume by 2025, we will be wasting, 25 billion meals will be produced every day, 25 billion, because our population will be 8 billion, approximately, every day you have 3 meals. And every meal you are wasting something. How much quantity is wasted, just imagine. And that is a source of carbon, source of energy, okay, maybe fermented or whatever, or you create some chemicals. So that, to create that zero waste society, the concepts have to be implemented from now on. It's not going to happen just overnight. It will happen slowly. But yes, we require legislation, we require technology. And I am a firm believer in technology. I think technology takes care of many, many problems, which legislation does not.
Very true, Dr. Yadav. Thank you. So thank you for a wonderful presentation and insight, and we look forward to hear your words of wisdom in the times ahead. So over to you again, Abhijit.
Okay, sir. I think it goes down here then.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.